My name is Frances Allard. 3 weeks after my grandfather's funeral, I received a text from my mother. Family meeting, Sunday 3 p.m. Be on time, no explanation. No warm-up, just a demand. Despite the lack of invitation or clear reason, I obeyed, foolishly thinking that perhaps this was just some post-funeral business to resolve. When I arrived at the house, it looked exactly as I remembered. The neat shrubs, the blue shutters, the porch swing no one ever used, but something was off. As I stepped inside, the air felt heavier. It wasn't the lighting or the silence, it was the arrangement of people. My family sat stiffly in the living room, and in front of them 2 strangers in tailored suits were already waiting. "Frances," my mother greeted me. Her smile was the same one she used at church potlucks, at school fundraisers, the smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Meet our family advisors." She gestured toward the 2 men as though they were long-lost friends. I glanced around the room. My sister Karen sat in the corner, staring into her lap like a scolded child. My younger brother Mason looked like he'd been crying, but there were no tears, just red, dry eyes. And there, by the fireplace, stood my stepfather, arms crossed as if rehearsing his stance for weeks. "Would you like some coffee?" my mother asked, trying too hard to maintain the illusion of normalcy. I placed my leather folder on my lap, crossed my legs, and without hesitation replied, "No, I'd like to know why I'm here." "Because we're family," my mother said, syrupy and forced. "And your grandfather would have wanted us to work together." It was then that I realized this wasn't a meeting. This wasn't a conversation. It was a presentation, a carefully coordinated effort to get me to hand over the one thing they couldn't steal when he was alive, his legacy. And unfortunately for them, I was prepared. My grandfather, Harold Vance, wasn't just the man who raised me, he was the foundation of everything I believed in. He was the reason I held onto structure, spreadsheets, and integrity. He taught me that promises matter, even when no one is watching. He founded Vance Materials when he was just 27, with nothing but a rusted pickup truck and a handshake loan from a neighbor. By the time I was born, Vance Materials had become a multi-state supplier of commercial-grade lumber, insulation, and concrete composites. Every contractor within 5 counties knew his name. As a child, while my sister begged for sparkly shoes and Mason played with train sets, I asked to visit the warehouse. I loved the sharp scent of pine, the hum of forklifts, and the way Grandpa's voice carried through the steel rafters when he walked the floor. When I was 12, he handed me my first ledger and said, "Let's see how your brain handles columns instead of crayons." I was hooked. My mother, Denise, never understood this. She preferred nice things and liked them fast. She once told me, "Your grandfather builds warehouses, I build a life." That life included 3 maxed-out credit cards, a leased Mercedes, and a revolving door of crisis purchases. Spa retreats disguised as emotional recovery, handbags bought on clearance, and charity galas for networking. The will had been read 2 weeks after the funeral, in a wood-paneled conference room that smelled of furniture polish and antique leather. My mother wore black silk and oversized sunglasses like she was stepping off the set of a low-budget soap opera. Karen sniffled softly through the preamble. Mason just looked confused. The executive, Mr. Halbrook, kept a steady voice as he moved through the formalities. Minor bequests, a scholarship donation to Grandpa's alma mater, a small trust for a retired employee. Then came the part I'd been dreading. "To my granddaughter, Frances Claire Allard, I leave the remainder of my estate, including but not limited to all remaining shares in Vance Materials, my personal investment accounts, real property holdings, and personal effects." The room froze. I felt it before I heard the reaction. "This is a joke," my mother spat, pushing her sunglasses up to her forehead. "He must have been confused. Read it again." "I've read it several times, Mrs. Vance," Mr. Halbrook replied, unfazed. "Your father was explicit." Karen gasped like it was a line from a stage play. "He loved all of us. He wouldn't pick favorites." Mason didn't say a word. He just rubbed his hands together like he didn't know what to do with them. "This isn't happening," my mother whispered. But it was. In that moment, I wasn't just his granddaughter. I was the sole heir to everything Harold Vance had built from the ground up, and I wasn't ready for it. Later that day in the parking lot, my mother approached me. Her voice was calm, but there was poison behind her words. "Just sign everything over," she said, as if it was a simple task. "I'll divide it fairly. I'll make sure everyone's cared for." I didn't answer immediately, not because I was unsure, but because I needed to choose my words carefully. Finally, I spoke. I need time to think. She narrowed her eyes. This isn't yours, Francis. It's ours. Family money, family legacy. That's not what Grandpa said, I replied. Her mask slipped just for a second. He was manipulated, she hissed. You spent too much time with him. He wasn't well. But I remembered clearly. He'd updated his will 6 months before his death, fully lucid, fully intentional. I recalled the day he sat me down in his study, his voice gravelly but clear. They're going to hate this, but I built this for someone who understands what it cost me to make it. That person's not your mother. It wasn't a compliment. It was a burden, a responsibility. And now it was mine. The first message came that night. It was from Karen. Please don't let this ruin everything. We're still your family. Then my mother, you'll understand once you have children of your own. Family comes first. And finally, Mason, why? By morning, my voicemail was full. Old friends of my mother, women I hadn't seen since neighborhood bake sales in middle school, they all said the same thing. Francis, I'm heartbroken. Your mother always spoke so highly of you. This is such a disappointment. Disappointment, that word came up a lot. What they didn't see, what they'd never cared to understand, was what Grandpa and I had built together, not just a business relationship, but a bond forged in mutual respect. I didn't inherit this like I won the lottery. I earned it. One spreadsheet, one late-night phone call, one warehouse visit at a time. But none of that mattered in the court of family opinion. 2 days later, Mason showed up outside my apartment. No call, just his hunched figure on the lobby security cam. Hands jammed in his jacket pockets, looking like a kid who'd forgotten his homework. When I opened the door, he didn't step inside. I'm not here to argue, he said, voice quiet. Okay, I replied, not understanding where this was going. He glanced up, eyes bloodshot but focused. Mom's losing it. She's already calling realtors. Says she needs to refinance the house before you freeze the assets. I blinked. I haven't frozen anything. She doesn't believe that, Mason muttered. He looked at me for a long moment, like he wasn't sure how to proceed. Then he said, I just wanted to warn you, she's planning something. Then he left, no hug, no handshake, just a quick exit, like he wasn't sure where he belonged anymore. I stood there in the doorway, silent, not sad, not angry, just empty. That night, Liam, my boyfriend and the only person who hadn't treated me like an ATM with a soul, brought takeout. He sat next to me, holding my hand while I stared blankly at my rice. I want you to meet someone, he said gently. I didn't answer at first, just picked at the food. She's a probate lawyer. Her name's Angela Dwyer. Old friend from law school, Liam continued. She's not here for a fight unless you need one. She's for protection. I nodded slowly, but I didn't speak. I didn't need to because I knew he was right. I needed someone who could help me navigate this mess without pushing me to burn bridges with the family entirely. The next morning, I called Angela. We met in a small, quiet office above a florist shop. No mahogany desks or intimidating glass walls, just plants, natural light, and someone who listened without interrupting. After hearing everything, she leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled in front of her mouth, thinking. You're already in the middle of a coordinated pressure campaign, she said, her voice calm, measured. Classic family guilt tactics, but based on the will and what you've told me, you're on firm legal ground. I didn't want to fight them, I never had, I just wanted it to stop. We prepare, Angela said, watching me carefully. Document every message, every voicemail, every visit, no signing anything, no matter what they call it. I agreed. It sounded simple, straightforward, until the next message arrived. It was a photo of my mother shopping for patio furniture. The caption read, #self-care, retail therapy through grief, apparently. That same day, she texted me claiming she couldn't afford her utility bill. I had to laugh at the absurdity of it. She had never been short on money when it came to luxuries, handbags, cruises, spa weekends. But now, suddenly, she was broke. It was then that I started printing everything. Every text, every voicemail, every email, nothing was going to slip through the cracks. The formal invitation arrived soon after, in the form of another text from my mother. Sunday 3 p.m. house, let's resolve this. Bring your paperwork. No signature, no emojis, just a time-stamped grenade. Angela didn't like it. This feels like an ambush, she warned. It is, I replied, but I'm not walking in blind. She offered to come with me, but I declined. I need to face them myself, but I want you waiting nearby. One text from me and you're at the door. I arrived at the house at exactly 2:59 p.m., the curtains were drawn, and the porch smelled faintly of my mother's perfume, a telltale sign that she had been outside earlier, likely rehearsing for the moment I arrived. Before I could even knock, the door swung open. "Frances," she beamed, her hair freshly styled, her teeth glinting like a politician on the campaign trail. Right on time. I stepped inside, and the scene before me could have been lifted from a courtroom drama. Karen sat stiffly on the edge of the couch, her hands knotted tightly in her lap. Mason was beside her, eyes downcast, lost in his own thoughts. My stepfather loitered near the fireplace, arms folded, like a bouncer waiting for a signal to intervene. And of course, there they were, the two suited men seated in the armchairs usually reserved for family. "These are Mr. Hale and Mr. Darnell," my mother introduced them grandly. "They've kindly offered to help us untangle this unfortunate misunderstanding." I nodded but didn't offer a handshake. I wasn't here to play polite. Only one chair was open, an old, high-backed wooden one placed directly across from them, perfectly positioned for an interrogation. I sat down without a word, laying my leather folder across my lap. "Would you like some coffee?" my mother asked again, desperately clinging to the illusion of civility. "I'm fine. Let's get to it," I replied, my tone steady, unmoving. Mr. Hale cleared his throat and launched into the rehearsed script. "We're here today because your family is deeply concerned about the strain this has caused," he said. "No one wants a prolonged dispute, especially when your grandfather's intention was clearly for the family to stay united." I let the silence hang between us, a weight I allowed to settle. The longer they waited, the less control they had. "He wrote a will," I finally said, breaking the silence. My mother's voice was quick, too quick. "We're not disputing that, sweetheart. But surely you can agree that splitting everything between us would be more harmonious." "Harmony wasn't in the will either," I replied, meeting Mr. Darnell's gaze. He opened his briefcase and slid a stack of documents across the table. "This is a voluntary redistribution agreement. You retain a healthy percentage, 20%. The rest returns to the family, as was always understood." "Understood by whom?" I asked calmly, refusing to sign anything. Karen finally spoke up, her voice shaking. "Grandpa was sick, Frances. He wasn't thinking clearly. He thought you would know what to do," I countered. "He trusted me." Mason stirred in his seat, his voice a quiet murmur. "Mom says if we don't sort this now, we might lose the house." I looked at him steady. "Why is that?" My mother's face cracked for a split second, revealing the lie beneath her calm veneer, but she snapped it back into place. "Frances, don't do this." Mr. Hale quickly jumped in. "It would be unfortunate if this moved to court. Claims of undue influence could muddy the estate's reputation." There it was, the threat, cloaked in legal jargon and polished leather. I placed my hand on my folder and spoke, calm and collected. "Before I respond, I'd like to clarify one thing." Everyone turned to me, tension thick in the air. "6 months ago, Craig," I said, locking eyes with my stepfather, "you mentioned to Grandpa's nurse that you'd already put a deposit on a property in Naples. Was that with inheritance money you hadn't yet received?" His mouth opened, then closed. I kept my eyes on him, never wavering. "I have a recording," I continued, "and a paper trail." I slid a document across the table. It was a printout from my grandfather's ledger, his neat handwriting confirming a $30,000 loan to my mother. She had claimed it was for Mason's college, but I knew better. My mother's smile vanished as she stared at the paper. I didn't stop there. Another sheet, an Instagram photo of her on a cruise, sipping champagne, captioned "Deserved this hash blessed." I looked up at the two advisors, still seated across from me. "Still feel like drawing up paperwork today?" They didn't respond. No one did. My mother stood up abruptly, her chair scraping harshly against the hardwood floor. "You ungrateful little," she began, her voice shrill, but I didn't flinch. I simply slid another paper across the table. "May 8th, I said calmly. "You told Grandpa Rachel needed emergency dental surgery. He gave you $20,000. You were in Scottsdale that weekend spa package, right? I remember the monogrammed robe." Karen went pale. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, as if the weight of my words had physically drained her. Craig cursed under his breath, his hand trembling slightly. "This is low, Frances," my mother hissed, digging through a dead man's notes to twist his memory against his own family. "He wasn't confused," I said, my voice unwavering. "He was exhausted, and he kept records because he knew this would happen." I reached for the final item in my folder, a sealed envelope, slightly worn. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable, my grandfather's looping script. For Francis, I didn't open it, I didn't need to, but the two men in suits were already shifting in their chairs. The confidence drained from their posture as they realized they weren't in control anymore. "Mr. Hale," I said, looking up from the envelope. "You're not legal counsel, are you? Just pressure brokers." He didn't answer, but his silence spoke volumes. "I've already retained a lawyer," I continued, addressing my mother directly. "She's in a car outside. One word from me and she's at the door." The two advisors stood up in near unison, both snapping their briefcases shut. "We'll excuse ourselves," one of them muttered, glancing at my mother. "Mrs. Vance, we were unaware of any pending counsel representation." My mother's expression turned to stone. Her lips tightened as she shot me a glare that could freeze fire. "This isn't over," she hissed. "Actually," I said, standing slowly and deliberately, "it is." I gathered my documents, making sure to keep them in neat piles. "I'm not signing anything. I won't enable your spending, and I won't let you rewrite the past just because the present no longer suits you. You owe us," I added, turning to look at my mother. "I owe Grandpa," I finished firmly, my resolve hardening. "That's who I'm honoring." As I turned to leave, Mason stood. Everyone froze, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. "I didn't know," Mason said quietly, looking at my mother, "about the cruise or the spa or that you used my name to take money from him." He looked at me, his face filled with something close to guilt, or maybe it was just realization. "You said Francis was selfish, but you lied about everything." "Mason, sit down," my mother snapped, her voice rising in frustration. The word hit like a bell. "No," he said, his voice calm but strong. "Can I come with you?" I nodded, standing tall as I walked towards the door. We left in silence, the weight of the moment settling around us like a heavy fog. No words were spoken as we walked out the door. Mason followed me, his eyes distant but focused. We passed the stunned faces of a family that had always assumed I'd bend, always assumed they could take what they wanted from me. Not this time. The door slammed behind us, the sound reverberating through the house like a final exclamation mark. The porch light flickered, but for once, I didn't look back. When we got to the parking lot, Angela was already out of her car, standing by the curb, watching us closely. "You okay?" she asked, her eyes flicking to Mason, who was still silent, lost in his thoughts. "He's with me," I replied. "And we're done here." As Mason and I got into my car, I felt a strange sense of calm. It wasn't relief exactly, but it was something close to it. A quiet assurance that I had done what was right, what Grandpa would have wanted me to do. Mason didn't speak much on the ride back to my apartment. He sat in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead, his fingers occasionally tightening around the seatbelt as if the act of holding on was the only thing keeping him grounded. When we reached my place, he followed me inside without asking if he could stay. He already knew. "You're on the couch," I said, as I opened the door. "It folds out, sheets are clean." He nodded, a quiet thanks escaping his lips as he took off his jacket and made himself comfortable on the couch. We didn't talk about what had just happened. Not that night. We just sat there in the silence, each of us processing the chaos in our own way. I made tea, he drank it. I scrolled through emails. He stared at the ceiling. The silence wasn't heavy, it was healing. By morning, I had a plan. I returned to Grandpa's house, the one I now legally owned, but hadn't stepped foot in since the funeral. I unlocked the front door, and the air inside smelled stale, thick with memories and dust. I made my way straight to his study. The smell of old paper, cedar, and coffee grounds still lingered in the room. His desk was exactly as he'd left it. I opened the center drawer and found the journal. I flipped through its pages, finding everything as I remembered, dates, numbers, names, all written in his sharp, no-nonsense handwriting. But then I saw it. A new note scribbled in the margin near the back. "Francis has what Denise never learned: restraint, clarity. If she chooses to lead this business, it may survive me. If she chooses to love it, it may outlive us both." I sat there for a long time, just breathing it in, the weight of his words filling me. That afternoon, I met Angela for lunch. I showed her the journal, and together we filed it as supplementary evidence with the probate court, sealing any loophole that might be exploited later. We also drafted the paperwork for a small educational trust in Mason's name, just enough to support his degree without tying him to anyone's leash. Angela nodded as I signed it. "This is clean, fair, generous." When I got home that evening, Mason was sitting on the couch, reading one of Grandpa's old trade magazines. "You know," I said, leaning on the doorframe, "he always wanted to expand the business into green materials, eco-lumber, thermal concrete, but the board wouldn't move fast enough." Mason looked up at me, his face lighting up with recognition. "I remember, he used to rant about it during dinner." I smiled. "What would you say to an internship? Real work, no shortcuts." He blinked, surprised. "Are you serious?" "Completely." A slow smile spread across his face, relief, hope, maybe a trace of pride. "Yeah," he said, "I'd like that." We clinked mugs of cold tea in silent agreement. It wasn't the kind of legacy my mother wanted, but it was better. 1 year later, I reopened the doors to Vance Materials, not as the quiet granddaughter but as its next chapter. Mason now runs our eco division while finishing school. He's becoming the kind of man Grandpa hoped he would be, quietly capable, steady, focused. Karen reaches out sometimes in small, careful ways. I don't open the door wide, but I don't shut it either. My mother disappeared into another zip code for now, and that's fine. Some inheritances are measured in money. Others are measured in scars, in choices, in silence. Grandpa didn't leave me his empire out of favoritism. He left it to me because I was the only one who wouldn't burn it to the ground. In his journal, he once wrote, "Frances won't always be loved for doing what's right, but she'll sleep at night." He was right, I do. The wealth he gave me wasn't in stocks or property. It was in clarity, boundaries, and strength. And in the end, I didn't just carry his legacy, I built my own.